Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining in another week. Have a great show planned for you today. Later on, I'll have with me Josh Contraguerro, who's the Vice President of Marketing at Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration, talking about some of the things that creep up during the winter and spring months that they can help with and help you prepare, and talk about some of the things they've been doing in the community. And thankfully, everyone has survived the snowstorm that wasn't, for the most part. Got some snow over the course of the last week, but not some of the heavy snowfall predictions that were maybe being predicted. But there still have been some, that freeze and thaw cycles that cause problems for people. So we'll talk all about that. But first, we'll start off with some of our usual features. And I want to start off with a legal tip, and that is this. You don't have a right of privacy when it comes to your computer at work. Many people think, that's my computer. My employer can't look and see what I'm doing on my computer. Well, it's not your computer. If the employer owns that computer, that laptop, whatever you may be utilizing, it's their computer or laptop. And for the most part, there may be some minor exceptions here and there in some states, but for the most part, you don't have any right to privacy there. So your employer can monitor what you're doing on your computer. They can monitor your emails if it's through a network server through the company. They can monitor, what things you're doing on the internet, or saving or not saving, what photos you have on there, et cetera, because it's their computer. And many people just don't realize that, or don't think that, and think, hey, my employer's looking at my stuff. Well, no, your employer's looking at their stuff. It just happens to be things that you are doing on their stuff. So be aware of that, and know that, if there's something that you don't want your employer to see, do it at home on a home computer that you own, do it on a phone that you own, do it somewhere that something that they have nothing to do with. And the fact of the matter is that if you're doing something that you consider to be not company business while you're at work anyway, it's probably not right anyway. It's, you're doing that on company time. They're paying you to be there doing work, not to be doing something private or personal, that type of thing. So I know it's 2019 and people tend to do that sometimes at work. They get on their Facebook pages where they want to look at some things on the internet and maybe even do a little bit of shopping from now and again from time to time. It's really just not right. I mean, you're being paid to do a job. Give that employer an honest day's work for an honest day's wage. So anyway, just a little legal tip there. I'm going to turn to a quote. And this comes from, of all people, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who of course made his fame first in bodybuilding and then acting, and later on as governor of the state of California. And he once said, "Help others and give something back. I guarantee you will discover that while public service improves the lives in the world around you, its greatest reward is the enrichment and new meaning it will bring your own life." And I think there's a lot to be said for that. I try to pick quotes that I think that ring true and have a lot of meaning. And, so many times when people give to their communities, when they serve others, people look and say, well, they're doing that for others. And that's great. That's what you want to do. You want to be a servant. You want to serve others. But the rewards really come internally from what you get from doing that, and hopefully the reward of going to heaven someday. But a lot of rewards from giving back and doing things for the community. And along those lines, I want to mention someone this week. The Wheeling community lost someone that's really given to the community for a number of years. That's Robert Scatterday Jr. Scat was the longtime race director of the Ogden newspaper's Half Marathon Classic. He, in more recent years, came up with the idea for a Ohio Valley Summer Event Guide, which is actually sponsored by Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration. Maybe we'll talk to Josh a little bit later on the show about that. But Scat was always looking for ways that he could give to the community and make the Ohio Valley a better place, and especially in his years of retirement. He was a professor of engineering. He was a Vietnam veteran who completed 136 combat missions, which is a ton, a recipient of the Bronze Star. And it would have been easy for someone like him to say, you know what, I've given to my country through my service, flying these combat missions. I've been a professor. I've taught young people engineering, built them up. It's time for me to rest. It's time for me to relax. It's time for me to have a little bit of fun. But the thing of it is when you saw Scat, he was having fun. It was fun to him to be involved in these things like the Ogden Classic, like the Summer Event Guide. And he brought energy to those around him and really caused others to want to help the community as well. I remember when he came to me asking me if we would sponsor the Ogden race. We'd never done that before. Nobody really asked, to be quite frank. And he came and said, hey, will you do this? And by the way, it's going to go to, the proceeds are going to go to a good cause. It's going to go to this charity. It was easy to say yes to him. He always made it easy to say yes. I mean, and in fact, he wasn't going to leave without you saying yes. I mean, you knew he wasn't going to go away until you said yes. But The way that he approached it and the enthusiasm and energy that he had for it made it so easy to say yes. And the Wheeling community is really has lost a good person in Scat. And I think that he became a friend to so many people that didn't know him before, but got to know him through these community endeavors that became close to his heart. So I wanted to mention him this week and certainly send my condolences out to his daughter, Wendy, who of course is a city councilwoman here in the city of Wheeling and that I've known for a number of years, and the rest of his family and many friends that he had, because it will be a big loss for us all. We need to take a break. When we come back, I'll have my guest with me, Josh Contraguerro. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show.
When reviewing your oil and gas offers or royalty check statements, do you wonder, am I being offered a fair amount? Do I feel comfortable reading the statement? Do I have peace of mind? If you answered no to these questions, you need Bordas Mineral Management. Our passion is helping mineral owners protect and expand their mineral wealth. Our examiners tell you whether you're being treated fairly and getting paid what is rightfully yours. Bordas Mineral Management. Be protected. Have peace of mind.
Recommended by the highest authorities. Danoon Lumber.
Looks like a bad one's coming. Yeah. Right?
Welcome back to the show. This is my favorite time each week when I have a guest with me, and this week's no different. I have with me Josh Contraguerro, the Vice President of Marketing at Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
Speaking of having you back, you were the third guest ever on the show, all the way back in 2016, and life's changed for you since then. I think you had no kids then, 2 now, and been now in the workplace a little bit longer and kind of more of a part of the real world, so to speak. We were talking more WVU football, which you'd been a part of not too long before that back then.
Yeah, definitely kind of dove into the whole real world quickly, and like you said, a lot has changed, and wouldn't change any of it though, so it's been great.
Good deal. Well, people, see your commercials, hear the Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration jingle. It's funny even hear kids singing it sometimes because they've come to know, and we're gonna save you, and you hear all that. But some people don't know what all the company entails, and that you've got, not just the location in Wheeling where you started, but now Pittsburgh and Morgantown, and so many different things to offer now.
Yeah, a lot of times I try to narrow it down and say if it happens to your home or facility or business, we can take care of it. Whether it is the normal fire, wind, smoke, mold, sewage, water, to flu outbreak and decontamination and biohazard cleanups, to temporary services such as heating and air conditioning, and then still have trucks on the road daily doing carpet cleaning, what we were founded on over 40 years ago. Carpet cleaning, duct cleaning, general specialized cleaning, things like that too.
It's interesting you mentioned the flu outbreaks and things like that, and of course last year you guys went down and took care of the WVU basketball team locker room when the team was the flu was going around the team, and took care of that. But doing that in places like that, or in schools or office settings or hospitals, is really important.
Yeah. A lot of times anywhere where a lot of people interact. So we've done daycares, restaurants. One thing that has been real big through the southern part of the Ohio Valley and up into Ohio has been the hepatitis outbreaks at restaurants. A lot of people don't know because it's something that we don't publicly blast out there, but we go in and have helped many restaurants that have been shut down because of hepatitis outbreaks. So our specialized equipment can be used from hospitals to home for someone that's come back with weakened immune systems. We can go in and sanitize and clean their house for them at a very reasonable cost.
That's interesting. That's one that I had never really thought about, as somebody that maybe has undergone chemotherapy and does have a weakened immune system. They really have to be careful about not getting infections, and you guys can make sure that when they are coming from the hospital, I guess, back to the house, that's a very clean environment for them as well.
Yes, especially with the weakened immune systems, with chemos, also with the C. diff patients, to make sure that they don't come back and get reinfected.
This time of year, of course, a busy time for you all as well, especially when you get these cold cycles where, like we've had recently, where the temperature drops way down, everything's frozen, and thaws back out and pipes break and things like that. And one of the things I guess that's important is to get on that right away.
Yeah, so definitely with pipe breaks, or what we're experiencing a lot right now this week. A lot of people think the pipes break when it's sub-zero and at 8 degrees and things like that. Actually, it's when the temperatures warm back up, because typically the ice is blocking the broken pipe. So until that ice melts and it gets back up into the 30s and 40s is then when the water lets loose. But yeah, definitely taking care of it right away, getting the materials that can be saved and drying them properly, and also getting materials that cannot be saved, getting them out so that they don't cause secondary damages and other things such as mold and other problems.
One of the things that I've seen you all use, because I've had a water break or two myself at office buildings or homes, things like that, is that you've got these, I guess they're called water meters or something like that, where you can detect if there are things behind walls without having to necessarily cut the wall out and look and see if there's water there.
Yeah, and depending on the situation or the material that's in question, we have a variety of high tech moisture meters and probes. Also, we have infrared cameras that pick up on heat differences and can track water in chases. Just because it's not dripping wet doesn't mean it isn't wet or hasn't been wet at some point. So we can check levels of moisture, and then also during the drying stage we use them to make sure things are drying at the proper time and we don't over dry, because that's just as bad as maybe not drying it properly. Is you have a certain piece of furniture or certain wood floor that it needs moisture content. It doesn't need to be 0% dry, so we make sure that we're not damaging secondary items.
When you come down to your facility, which is located in the South Wheeling area, massive facility and all these trucks. But one of the things, if you go into the facility like I have, is that you see these drying processes going out, but we also see items that have maybe been damaged but not completely ruined. The homeowner may think that's been completely ruined by a fire or something like that, smoke damage, and they may sometimes be family heirlooms or mementos that are important to someone's life. And you guys are able to oftentimes take care of those as well and get those restored so people still have those family heirlooms or mementos.
Yeah, and that's a lot of the heartfelt things that a lot of our employees that work on that side, to be able to take a family heirloom or a stuffed animal from a child who has since passed, and people don't want to just replace with a teddy bear. They want that teddy bear back, and to be able to sanitize, to clean, but give that particular item back to a homeowner, to a family, makes a world of difference. And you can just see the weight lift off their shoulders because they get that piece of normalcy back to their life.
We needed to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about some of the things that Panhandle does in our community. We may even talk a little bit of WVU football that they're associated with. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show.
You earned it. Let us help you save it. Belmont Savings Bank. Focused on your future.
So, how was your first day?
Long. So, Josh asked me about you.
Daddy's home. Go get him.
For your home, for your life, for more than 50 years. The Hardwood Specialists. DeNoon Lumber.
Welcome back to the show. I've been speaking with my guest this week, Josh Contraguerro, who's the Vice President of Marketing at Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration, and been talking about some of the services that Panhandle provides, but also very active in the community, supporting things here in the local area like the Super 6 Championships and things around the state like WVU Children's Hospital, the medical department down there. And you guys have really been involved with so many different charities. It's hard to even think of them all, but it's obviously very important to the company.
Yeah, it goes back to our kind of founding principles that we want to support the community we call home. Our employees employ over 150 employees. spread out throughout the region and have a lot of communities and a lot of important things in their life, and then also we just feel that it's our part to do what we can do for our community and especially those who are sick, the children, big supporters of the YMCA, want to give kids opportunity, want to give individuals opportunity to succeed. So we try our best to be part of anything we can.
One thing you did that was pretty cool for the community recently was that you gave away a car, a brand new car. That kind of a little promotion that ran throughout the course of 2018 where any of your customers had a chance to be into that pool, and this week somebody won the car. Yeah,
someone won the car. It was kind of, we always say we truly appreciate and value our customers. The customers of this community and throughout has supported us these 40 plus years. So, I mean, everything, no matter if it's something small or something large, we appreciate the business and appreciate the opportunity that our customers give us. So it was something fun that we looked at that we could give to one really, really lucky customer, and then had a handful of other consolation prizes for the rest of those who showed up, and we had a good evening the other night.
Looked like, I saw it on Facebook, it said over 3,000 entries and of names that went into the hopper, and you pulled the semifinalists first for like 15. And as you said, everybody that was pulled got a consolation prize, but pretty cool to just have a chance to win a car. I mean, it can really make a difference in someone not having a car payment and be able to go through their life and just have that brand new car. Maybe they didn't even have a car. So.
Exactly. So it was we enjoyed doing something different for some people.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. I mentioned earlier when in the show that last time we were on, talked a lot about WVU football, and you were on the WVU football team for 4 years when you were in college, and went through a transition of a coach from Coach Stewart to Coach Holgerson. Your last year, and these current WVU players are now experiencing a transition as well, going from Coach Holgerson to Coach Neil Brown. And you had an opportunity to meet Coach Brown here in the last week or so. What was your first impression?
Blew me away, honestly. I obviously still really connected to the program, both with work and personal. So I had done a lot of research on him and studied his background when all the names were getting thrown around, who the replacement might be. He was impressive on paper and just blew you away in person. Very big process and procedures, very big players first guy, and he has a track record of success.
One of the things that he mentioned in some of his introductory remarks is that he really wants to look at in-state players a little bit harder than maybe what's been done in the past. And of course, you having grown up here in Wheeling and played in your high school football here, you end up playing at WVU as an invited walk-on, but then ultimately awarded with the scholarship your last semester there for your work with the team and being such a great player as part of the the scout team and being awarded a Scout Team of the Week player and things like that. But Coach Brown has said he's going to look at West Virginia guys a little bit harder than maybe what's been done in the past. I mean, that's got to make you and as somebody that played on that team coming from this state happy to see more guys might get that opportunity.
Yes, for sure. I mean, there's some great hidden gems in the state. Work ethic, second to none for a lot of these kids, and then it makes you kind of cringe a little bit knowing that a couple guys here and there have slipped away. And I mean, we got a guy in the NFL now from West Virginia that never stepped foot on a campus in Morgantown.
Sure, Ryan Switzer, he played at North Carolina. Yeah.
So every time now he returns a punt or does something, it's just like, man, that was a guy that we missed out on. So I think it's going to be great, and I think it'll be a great experience for these kids that are going to go through a recruiting experience, because it really is a highlight of your high school career to go through that process, and more kids will get to experience it now.
I think it'll also be good for the communities around West Virginia. If you say you're from Huntington and you have a kid from your hometown that ends up playing for WVU, or you're from Fairmont and you have a kid, it makes you always root for the team because it's your team and it's your home state and everything. But to have somebody maybe or you see at Christmas time walking around playing out there or as a part of that team, it makes you root even maybe that much harder for that team.
Yes, for sure, and makes you root harder, and also it's going to make a lot of the young kids possibly try harder or work a little bit harder, because they're going to see a player from their crosstown rival made it D1, so why can't I? So they're going to try a little harder in the weight room, and that's just going to elevate the playing field across the state of what kids can do.
What's it like as a player when a new coach comes in? I mean, as I said, you had to experience that transition from Coach Stewart to Coach Holgerson. It was a little bit of a crazy transition, but it was a transition. What's that like for the players now to have to get used to going from maybe Coach Holgerson's style to Coach Brown's style?
It's a very big learning curve, and not just for the coach, the student athlete. It's a big learning curve. Just seeing how they want you to train, even in practice on drills. You're used to always tackling. This coach might not want you to hit as hard or hit down low and things like that. So just feeling each other out, but comes down to just getting to know outside of football, getting to know the coach, and Coach Brown has made it a point to say that he tries to make it more of a family dinners, pizza parties, and things like that, to where you're calling your coach or your teammates that you're competing against to go out and watch a movie and stuff outside of football and get that bond. So I think that's going to help the transition move a little faster.
Well, it'll be interesting to watch. My first impression has been a good one. I haven't had an opportunity to meet him like you did, but just what I've seen in the press conferences and things like that, it seems like he's got a shot to do well.
Yeah, he's going to put the pieces in line, and we just hope they fall accordingly.
All right. Well, hey, I appreciate you being on the show, and thanks for all you in the company do for the community, and we'll have you back again sometime.
Thank you very much. Look forward to it.
We need to take a break. When we come back, I'll be talking a little bit more sports. We'll talk about some of the craziness of the NFL playoffs this past weekend. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show. People in nursing homes are some of the most vulnerable members of our society. They're there because they can't take care of themselves. Those facilities have a duty to take care of our loved ones, and when they don't, it's important they're held accountable. We've not only collected record results against negligent nursing homes, but more importantly, we've helped so many families get the answers and closure they so badly needed.
Bordas and Bordas, fighting for justice.
We're Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration, and we're gonna save you. We've got it down to a science, an absolute state of art. We do it all, restoration, cleaning, and reconstruction. When disaster strikes, just pick up the phone. We're Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration, and we're gonna save you.
Welcome back to the show. It's time to talk sports, and let's start with the NFL playoffs. Big games this past weekend with the NFC and then AFC championship games. Of course, in the NFC championship game, the Saints going down to the Rams with some controversy involved, and controversy as well in the AFC championship game, but the Patriots defeat the Chiefs to advance to the Super Bowl. So now it'll be Patriots versus Rams. Let's talk about those two conference championship games. Of course, the Rams and Saints, big talk about a missed interference call late in the game that would have allowed the Saints to basically run the ball a few times, kick a game-winning field goal, and go home. Instead, enough time is left over. The Rams are able to go down, tie the game, go to overtime, and win it. And, when you talk about this, a lot of people are saying, well, look, this is ridiculous, or the game is fixed, or, this blown calls, that type of thing. There should be instant replay on everything, I'm not a fan of that, the replay on everything. Interference is a judgment call. Where the ball should be spotted, you can look on film and say, where was that ball? Interference, whether somebody interfered with someone or not, is a judgment call. And boy, on this one, the ref blew it. Bottom line, he blew it. There was clearly contact before the ball arrived, and the referee didn't call it. And that's part of the game sometimes, is you get it wrong. And refs get calls wrong all the time. That's the thing that people need to realize. It's just that it was magnified here because it was an NFC championship game at the very end of the game. So the whole world is watching, and it's a big play at a big time. But calls get missed all the time. That's part of the game. And we can't just say because it was at a big moment in a big game that, oh my gosh, this thing must be fixed, etc. The call got missed. It's unfortunate. You hate to see anybody's season missed, but there were probably a bunch of other calls that went the other way during the course of the game that nobody's talking about because it wasn't right at the end and it wasn't such a big-time play. So I think the bigger thing that people should be talking about is the ridiculous overtime rule that ended up affecting the Patriots and Chiefs game. Really, Patrick Mahomes doesn't get the ball. You're talking about the best offense in the NFL this year. These teams we're talking about were the four highest scoring offenses in the league during the course of the season. It's become an offensive game. It used to be defenses win championships. I talked about this last week on the show. Now apparently offenses do. But you have one offense that never got to set foot on the field in overtime. You know, yeah, Tom Brady's clutch when it comes down to it. In the moments when people are upset because roughing the passer was called when he basically just got tapped, or that type of thing. But look, the rules have changed, with the times, and that's how it is. These quarterbacks are going to be protected because they're worth, tens and tens of millions of dollars to these teams. But they need to fix these overtime rules. In an offensive game, it shouldn't come down to who wins the coin toss, and then that team gets the ball, goes down and scores, and the other offense never sees the field. What I would like to see is something that really no one's talked about. I'd like to see a version of the college overtime. In college, each team gets the ball at the opposing team's 25-yard line, and they alternate possessions until somebody wins at the end of those alternating possessions. I don't want to see it to 25. I think that brings the field goal kicker too much into play in the NFL, where these guys can make long kicks and they're paid money to do it and to be great kickers. I don't like that idea. I like a version like that, but you get the ball at your own 25-yard line. So alternating possessions from your own 25. That way you have to drive the length of the field. If you score a field goal, fine. You score a touchdown, fine. The other team then gets their chance, and they get the ball at their own 25. That brings offense into play. It brings defense into play. It even brings punting into play if you have to punt the ball and where that may go. It brings punt return to the game. The only thing it kind of takes out of the game is the kick return and the kick returner, but I can live with that because I think that's going to go by the wayside pretty soon anyway. It's almost all touchbacks now anyway, where they kick from. So I'd like to see alternating possessions from your own 25. That completely eliminates the coin toss being a factor at all. And let's face it, coin toss comes down to luck. I mean, it could be a heads, it could be a tails. That's a completely a lucky thing. Luck should not be a part of this. It should be the skill on the field. Let's give them alternating possessions from their own 25-yard line and see what happens. So that's my argument for how the overtime rules should be. I haven't really heard anybody else talking about that version. Maybe they are, but that's at least the Jamie Bordas version of what the NFL overtime should be. Speaking of professional sports, and by the way, next week we'll talk all about the Super Bowl matchup, and I'll have a special guest with me here. Next week I'll have with me C.J. Goodwin, who played most recently for the Dallas Cowboys in this year's playoffs, and of course played in the Super Bowl 2 years ago for the Atlanta Falcons. And we'll talk all about what goes into preparing for these games and what he thinks will happen as a result of having faced some of these teams, teams and players, et cetera, over the course of the last few years. But talking about another professional sport, the Golden State Warriors I talked a little bit about recently on the show, and DeMarcus Cousins is now back for them at center. And, you talk about a weapon. The one thing the Golden State Warriors haven't had is a dominant inside force over the course of the last several years, but they have it now. I mean, the guy's dunking the ball, he's rebounding. Believe it or not, in his first game back was 3 of 4 from three-point range, which I didn't expect at all. So, great performances there. So, and speaking of guys coming back, Tiger Woods now back. He'll be in the Farmers Insurance Open this week. You can catch that on WTRF right here on CBS. That's all the time we have this week. Thanks for joining in. We'll see you again next time on The Jamie Bordas Show.